5 reasons why the X100V is the best starter camera.
Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. Hopefully you're all having amazing creative days, and in this video I want to talk about why I believe this camera, this is a Fuji X100 series camera, this is an X100V, but I want to make an argument as to why I believe that this camera or this style of camera is the best camera for people who are new to photography. If you're new and you just want to learn, you have a passion for it, I would strongly recommend that you buy one of these cameras instead of one of those starter interchangeable lens cameras like a Rebel XTI, Z50, R10, that kind of thing. I believe that if you use one of these, you'll master exposure faster, you'll understand composition sooner, and you'll just get a better feel for photography and creating photographs. There's just something special about these X100 series cameras, and in this video I'm going to make an argument on why I believe that you should start with one of these instead of one of those. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so before I get into the 5 reasons why I think this camera is the perfect starter camera, I'm just going to go over some of the specs on this camera in case you don't know what the X100V is, you never heard about it before. I'm just going to touch base on a few of the things I really like, and the one thing I think is a bit of an issue with this camera. If you want to know more, I made a video about it right there. If you want to go check it out, go watch that video about the X100V and then come back and watch this one, and you'll be a little more informed. But with that being said, yeah, let's talk about a few of the features on this camera. All right, so this is the X100V, and this is the newest in the X100 series of cameras. Obviously, there's more. There's the older models too, and I'm bringing that up because the X100V might be, at its price point, it might be a little too expensive for newbie photographers. If you're just starting out, it may be just out of your budget, but there are used versions here, the X100T, the F, the S. Don't ask me how Fuji names their cameras. To me, it's like they just throw out a bunch of Scrabble pieces and pick a random letter. If someone knows why these cameras have the naming convention that they do, let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, number one, it's an APS-C size sensor. It's got a 23mm fixed lens, which means it doesn't come off, but the full frame equivalent of this lens is a 35. So if you're shooting with this camera, think of it as a 35mm lens, and you'll do a lot better. It's got buttons and dials on the outside, which is pretty cool. I'll talk about that more in this video. The X100V has a flip-up screen. I believe the other models don't, but in any case, you should be looking through the viewfinder or the screen and composing your shots. Don't worry too much about, doing this kind of stuff. Yeah, what else does it have? It has a built-in flash, and whatever, all cameras have built-in flashes, but what those other cameras don't have is built-in ND filters. So you can push this little lever or whatever button you want, or use the Q menu, whatever, to drop the ND filter. And if you don't know what that is, I hate this saying, but people use it on YouTube all the time. It's like sunglasses for your camera, and it'll just cut the amount of light coming into your camera. And if you turn on the flash at the same time, you make the whole image dark, and then use the flash to illuminate your subject, so your subject pops from the background. And that brings me to the next thing, that this lens here has a leaf shutter, so you can sync the flash and the shutter at like 3,000th, 2,000th, 4,000th of a second, which is insane. That's absolutely insane. You usually just find that on Hasselblad lenses, like you're looking at like $20,000 lenses with leaf shutters. So the cool thing is like you can sync your flash and your shutter speed at 4,000th of a second, which means that if you're shooting in bright daylight like sunlight, your flash will outpower the sun because of the duration of the power, right? So you can take flash photography at like high noon and get remove all the raccoon eyes on people's faces and do some pretty cool things. You can get really creative with this camera. So yeah, really happy with the features. It has, the battery life is decent. Battery and card go on the bottom. It's just a standard SD card, and battery life, no problem if you're shooting photos. If you start shooting videos, this camera has limitations with video. Watch the other video to find out what those are. But for photography, battery life is fine. If you get a second battery, it should last you the whole day, unless you're super trigger happy and always chimping and stuff. And then, you'll drain the batteries faster. Buttons, ergonomics is pretty good. No complaints there. The viewfinder is, I think, 3.9 million dots, which is pretty cool. And you also, if you pay attention right here to the viewfinder, you have an optical viewfinder, which is pretty cool. And then if you close it, it becomes an electronic viewfinder. So you can see exactly what your photo is going to look like Or, you know, you can go retro and it feels like an old disposable camera when you look through here because you have a little outline of what you're looking at. So that's pretty cool. Really nice features. You know, the weight and everything is good. The size is good. This camera, I'm going to talk about pocketability later on, but yeah, that's just the basics of the camera. The camera is waterproof, water resistant. This camera is water resistant. So you can take it in the rain, but you have to buy this adapter, which screws onto the front. And then you have to put a filter on the front of that lens in order to make it waterproof or water resistant, because the lens does protrude in and out from its housing so the water can get in there. So you have to have a filter on the front to make it completely water sealed. Although looking at the water sealing up close, I wouldn't really take this out in heavy rain. It doesn't look like it's professionally water sealed. It'll just take a little drizzle, but yeah. So with that being said, let's jump into the 5 reasons why I think this camera is the perfect starter camera. All right, so the first thing that makes this camera so much better than the interchangeable lens cameras is portability. I mean, yes, technically all cameras are portable. You throw it in a backpack, you take it anywhere. It's not like a fridge. Oh, I can't bring my fridge with me to the beach. But yeah, all cameras are portable, but this one just is exceptionally portable because it's so slim and narrow. Now, I don't want to say that this is pocketable, but it is pocketable depending on the type of pockets you have. If you're wearing skinny jeans, forget about it. But if you have, you know, normal baggy jeans or jacket pockets and things like that, this will fit, no problem. It'll fit in the glove compartment of your car. If you're going somewhere, just toss it in your car, take it with you. You can wear a strap. I personally have the little, I don't have it attached right now, but I have the Peak Design strap with the quick release buckles or anchors or whatever they're called. So I just, you know, I sling it around my shoulder, I walk around, I take my shots, you know, just take it with me anywhere. If you have a jacket, it'll actually fit under your jacket. If you wear it like across your shoulder like that, you can just pull it out, take your shot, put it back. Nobody even knows you're carrying a camera. And that leads to the advantage of portability is, as a new photographer, I stress to you that you should be shooting a ton of photos. Take photos every day, wear out your camera, break your sensor, you shoot so many photos, because that's how you learn. Every time you go out there and you shoot, you're gonna learn something, at least if you shoot with purpose, right? So go out there, take your shots, try this composition, try that composition, try shooting with flash, without flash, this lighting, this angle, that angle. And every time you go out and shoot, you know, bring your photos back to your computer, analyze your shots, figure out what you need to figure out, learn from your mistakes, and keep going. You know, that's the important thing, is make a lot of mistakes, take a lot of shots, learn from those mistakes, get better. So that's the number one reason I feel like this camera is better than an interchangeable lens camera, is because you are more likely to take this with you. Number 2, this camera will help you figure out how to expose your photos faster than those other cameras. And this is why, okay? Like, when you're just starting out with photography, you're trying to figure out your exposure, you get frustrated, you get annoyed, so you put it in automatic and you take your shots and you don't really learn anything at that point, right? But with this camera, you have your aperture on the outside, your shutter speed, your ISO, exposure compensation, they're all dials on the outside of the camera. So rather than changing the settings on your screen and, you know, that kind of thing, you actually have tactile buttons and you can visually see what you're doing, and that changes the experience. So now if you want to change your exposure, you're clicking your dials, you're moving things around, you're visually seeing what you're doing. And if you're a photographer, chances are you're a visual person, you're probably a visual learner. So just doing these things will help you figure out exposure faster. So that's a huge plus with this camera. It's just a fun experience to figure out how to expose your photos, and actually, you know, exposing your photos and taking good shots. It's rewarding. It's rewarding. There's just something about lining up your settings, taking your shot, and it's like, boom, oh, that's awesome. Number 3, the lens. This is a fantastic lens. This is a 35mm f2 lens. Now, if you were to go out there and buy a 35mm f2, it would probably cost you somewhere around, you know, $2,500 to $3,000, depending on the brand and all that stuff. But here you're getting a 35mm f2 as part of the whole deal, and that is awesome. The X100V, this new one, has the newest lens. All the previous models have the older lens. And from what I was reading, that older lens at f2 isn't quite sharp, like wide open, but if you stop it down to 2.8 f4 and all that stuff, it's fine. I haven't personally used those other cameras, so I can't say anything. I'm just going based on what I've read on the interwebs. So I know what you're thinking, why would you buy a camera with a fixed focal length lens? Like, you can't zoom in, you can't zoom out, what can you do with it? And let me explain. Now, the important thing with photography is you have to learn how to see your photos before you take those photos. And you have to learn how to see the world through different focal lengths. So having a fixed focal length lens actually lets you train your eye to see at that focal length. So the 35, for example, you master this, then you can master the 50, master the 85, the 135, the 24, the 15, all that kind of stuff. So as a photographer, I think or as someone who's taught people about photography, I think zoom lenses are the worst way to learn about photography, because you're zooming in, you're zooming out, you're changing your composition, but you don't know what you're shooting at. You don't know if you're what focal length you're at. So it becomes really hard to train your eye to see things. And the focal length you choose helps you tell your story or create your mood. And that's what a good photograph is all about. It's not like, oh, that's a cool shot. No, it's like, what's the mood of that shot? What's the story in that shot? What are you trying to say? That's what makes a good photograph. And in order to do that, you have to master your lenses and understand how your focal length helps tell your story and which focal length to use in which situation. So mastering the 35mm is a great way to start, because this is the most versatile focal length there is out there. You can shoot headshots with the 35mm. You can shoot full body shots with the 35mm. You can take environmental portraits and landscapes or architectural shots with the 35mm. So out of all the focal lengths, I think this is the most versatile most versatile focal length there is. So that's awesome. Also, when you get tired of this focal length, Fuji does make screw-on adapters, which are pretty good. And you can change this 35 into a 50mm, and you can also change it to a 28mm if you want to get a little wider. So you do have those options too if you really want, but I would strongly recommend mastering the 35mm focal length. Train your eye to see things in 35mm, and then move to the 50 or 28, and then train your eyes to see in those focal lengths and understand what kind of shots you can take at those focal lengths, how compression works and all that stuff. So I think that is definitely a bonus. Stay away from the zoom lenses if you are new to photography. It's just gonna mess you up, and it's not gonna train your brain to see photos correctly. Now, I don't know what to call this chapter. Noticeability, size, intimidation factor, I don't know. So this is the X100V, and this is the EOS R with a 35mm f1.4, okay? Now, this is a 35mm f1.2. Now, check out the size difference here. And the big thing is that if you're pointing this at somebody, if you're out there, this is an interchangeable lens camera. It's probably similar in size to the R10. So if you're out there taking photos with this, pointing this camera at people, people get intimidated right away. With this camera, nothing. People think it's a retro camera, vintage camera, film camera, and it's very light and easy. You're pointing it at people, you're taking shots, and people don't seem to react to it, whereas this, they will react to that for sure. Now, the thing is, when you're a new photographer, you want to go out there and you want to take pictures of people or landscapes or whatever, but assuming you want to take pictures of people, you want them relaxed. You want them feeling natural and happy and not intimidated. So when you're using this to shoot people and sort of pose people, it just feels like a lot more of a natural process. It's almost like you're shooting them with a big cell phone or a big smartphone kind of deal. And that is a huge advantage if you're just starting out in photography, because if you want to get nice portraits of people feeling relaxed and looking good, this will help, as opposed to pointing a big lens at them. This is better for people who want to be in front of the camera. You know, you're hiring models and stuff like that. The other cool thing with this camera is security doesn't seem to bother you. I've been around with that camera shooting around buildings downtown Toronto, and security comes out and like, no, you can't shoot pictures here. You can't have a professional camera here. You can't, you know, blah, 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 blah. They always come out and stop you. So as soon as you pull out a big camera like that, you're on their radar. You pull this out, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, it really, nobody cares. Like, you can walk right by security and you're taking photos and they're just like, yeah, pass right by. So this camera, not only is it portable and you take it everywhere with you, but nobody's really gonna care that you're shooting pictures with it. It's not really an intimidating camera. It doesn't look like a professional camera, even though you can get some really professional looking photos with this thing. So yeah, that's point number 4. And I think that's important, especially if you're new to photography. Just, you can take this anywhere and shoot pretty much whatever you want with it, and nobody's going to be like, oh my God, someone's pointing a camera at me. Okay. And number 5. Now, the final point I want to make about this camera is the fact that if you're new to photography, chances are you're not proficient in Photoshop and your photo editing skills aren't there. This camera has built-in film simulations. Now, if you shoot with any other camera, you shoot JPEG, RAW, whatever, you're gonna have to go edit those photos. With this camera, because of the film simulations, you can have beautifully edited photos right out of the camera, which is a huge time saver. I know for me, I'm a professional photographer, 17 years experience in the industry. And when I pull out this camera, I'm pulling this camera out to make money. I want to shoot photos of clients and things like that. When I'm pulling out this camera, I just want to have fun. And I don't want to waste time editing photos. And when you turn on those film simulations, like they look beautiful right out of camera. You could pretty much shoot JPEG, upload right to Instagram. Although I don't recommend shooting JPEG, I would still shoot RAW. And another thing, I don't know if this is still going to be around, but when I bought this camera, I got a free copy of Capture One with it. And the Capture One is like Lightroom, but way better. And you have all the Fuji film simulation. So if you shoot RAW, import your photos into Capture One, you can actually change your film simulations in post, and you can adjust the exposure, the noise reduction, mess around with the colors. You can basically fiddle with all the photos you want. That's a huge plus, especially if you don't want to fuss with photo editing. You can just shoot the photos, they come out beautifully right out of camera. Plus, there's also a Fuji community, and everyone's creating different photo recipes, different film styles, and you can take those, use them on your camera, and if you don't like the stock film simulations, you can add more. You can do more things and have more fun and create more edits and things like that. So it's really, really a cool community. And I find that the Fuji community is really nice. I mean, the people who shoot Fuji, I don't know if they're just like different breed of people, but they're all super friendly, super fun to talk to, and they all want to help you get better. And they're like, oh, you shoot Fuji too? Oh, here, let me show you this, let me show you that. So it's being part of the Fuji community is a different experience than, let's say, Canon or Nikon in my experience so far. So that's kind of cool. You don't have to fuss with editing. All right, so there you go. And those are the 5 things or 5 reasons why I feel like this camera is far superior to interchangeable lens cameras for people who are just getting into photography. So if you have a passion for photography and you just want to get into it, you want to shoot some photos, you want some beautiful photos right out of the gate without having to worry about Photoshop and Lightroom and all that other fancy editing software type stuff, this is the camera for you. It's going to teach you about how to find your correct exposure using buttons and dials, which is a lot of fun. You have a pretty versatile lens on the front. You've got a leaf shutter, you've got ND filters, you've got a flash. You can even add another flash on top if you want more power. You can shoot some basic video with it. I wouldn't really use this as a video camera. The menu is super user-friendly, so if you're new to the Fuji menu or using cameras in general, the menu here will be nice and easy for you. It's a very inconspicuous camera. You can take it anywhere, take shots, and people aren't gonna bother you that much. It comes in 2 colors. Of course, you have the silver and the black. And yeah, so I think this is a great starter camera, and chances are you're probably gonna fall in love with this camera and wanna keep it. Even when you upgrade to something else, this is a fun little just everyday take with you camera. Put it in your backpack, your pocket, and just go out for a walk and shoot some photos and have fun and enjoy your passion, because that's what this is all about, right? If you love photography, you want to get good at it so you can enjoy it and be passionate about it and create beautiful photos and share them with your friends. And this definitely helps you get there and do that. All right, and now you know why I think this is one of the best starter cameras out there. If you want to see some photos I took with this camera, check out my social media right there. I have some photos posted on the Instagrams and the Twitters. But yeah, this is the X100V. If you have any questions about it, leave it in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And with that being said, this video is over. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned a little something. And yeah, peace out. I will see you guys in the next video.